Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. This is the update for the Necromancer Tank for the Markarth DLC. There's been a couple changes to the Necromancer class, and there's also been changes to the amounts of penetration value that DPS need to bring, so your sets will most likely depend on whatever group you're running with. However, we'll get into all of this in a bit. Now let's quickly buff up and look at our character sheet here. Alright, we've got about 19k max Magicka, which is a nice pool, 45k max health, which is pretty big, over 22k max stamina, which is very nice, 2400 Magicka recovery with all our buffs on, which is awesome, and then our resistances are easily over 30k, which gets close to the cap of 31k as long as we keep all our buffs up. You can just see that fall off here. Let me quickly reapply it. Yeah. So, you've got great Magicka recovery, huge health pool, huge stamina pool, enough Magicka, and the resistances are almost at cap, so very nice. The attribute points are split into 9 Magicka, 45 health, and 10 in stamina. You do get an extra health buff for being a Necromancer, so you don't need all 64 into health here. You can easily put 9 into Magicka and 10 into stamina, just to make your resource pools on those sides a bit brighter, because we're already hitting 45k max health, which is very big anyway. Using the Bewitched Sugar Skulls as food, the Atronach for increased Magicka recovery as Mundus Stone, and then for pots we are using the normal Tri-Stat pots, the Essence of Health that gives you all 3 values, so health, Magicka, and stamina. Or you can just also run the Crown Tri-Restoration Potions, which do exactly the same thing if you've got a bunch of those in your bank. Okay, let's get into the skills then. The first thing on the front bar is Empowering Grasp, and this has been changed. Well, this hasn't really been changed, but Empower has been changed. The buff is very strong now. So what this does is it's pretty much your snare. Enemies who will be caught in these skeletal arms patches that you will summon on the ground will be immobilized and snared and stunned in the final area. So it keeps enemies in place if you've got a bunch of ads running towards you. And then each area applies minor maim to enemies and empower to your allies, and enhances the damage of your healing of your Spirit Mender by 40%, which we've got in the front bar as well. So this is a very strong skill now, mainly because it gives empower to your allies, which will make all of their light and heavy attacks stronger. It looks like this. You summon these 3 patches of skeletal arms, and you will empower your allies and snare and stun the enemies that you hit with it. So it's a very good skill. It comes from the Bone Tyrant skill line. Last thing you unlock there starts out as Grave Grasp, just morph it to Empowering Grasp. Next up is our heal, also from the Bone Tyrant skill line. First thing you unlock is the Hungry Sight. This is called Death Sight, morph it to Hungry Sight, and what this does is it will slice into an enemy's life force, dealing magic damage, and it will heal you for almost 7k health for the first enemy hit, and then for another 2k health for each additional enemy hit. And after dealing damage, you heal for 1k health every 1 second over 5 seconds. It scales off of your max health, which is why we're trying to have a big health pool of 45k on this build. And it just looks like this. It's a scythe, and you heal for the first enemy hit and for every additional enemy hit, and then you heal over time. So it's very strong. It's pretty much a damage skill, but it's also our main healing ability, our heal over time, so to speak. Next up is also an ability that heals us. Comes from the Living Death skill line, is the Spirit Guardian. Starts out as Spirit Mender, morph it to Spirit Guardian, lasts for 16 seconds, and what it does is you conjure a ghostly spirit to your side, and it will heal you or the lowest health ally every 2 seconds for 2k health, so it can also help your group. Plus, while active, 10% of the damage you take is transferred to the spirit instead. So it's a 10% damage reduction. You always want to keep this little guy up. He will take some damage for you, and he will heal either you or the lowest health ally in your group. Next up, as usual, is the 2 skills from the One Hand and Shield skill line, pretty much a tank's bread and butter. Heroic Slash will deal physical damage for 12 seconds, but it would also afflict the enemy with minor maim, reducing their damage done by 5%. and it will also grant you minor heroism, which will give you one ultimate every 1.5 seconds for 12 seconds. So always keep this up to afflict the enemy with minor maim all the time, and to also get ultimate back more faster all the time. And then obviously pierce armor, this has been changed as well in the Markarth patch. This is your main taunt. You pretty much taunt an enemy, and then you can see the little red flames over their head, and also the broken shield on the buff bar underneath the skeleton's name. And for 15 seconds it'll just be taunted towards you and only attack you. And the change in this has been that now this morph pierce armor will inflict the enemies with minor breach and major breach. So that's a huge physical and spell resistance reduction on the boss that you're taunting. So you pretty much get almost 6k for the major and almost 3k for the minor, so that makes almost 9k physical and spell resistance reduction for 15 seconds, which is why a lot of DPS in trial groups don't even need any points into spell or physical penetration themselves anymore, and they can distribute their champion points more towards DPS. And then the last thing we've got on here, which is also very good, is the Glacial Colossus on the front bar. This ultimate is summoning a Colossus, which will hit the ground 3 times, dealing frost damage, and with the final smash stun all the enemies. But the reason Necromancers the reason people love Necromancers in this group is because it also applies major vulnerability for 12 seconds, increasing the damage taken of the boss or the enemies by 10%. Now this used to be 25, they put it down to 10. However, it's still very strong. You still want this in your group. Just have the boss take 10% more damage only for using your ultimate. Very strong. It's a really good ultimate to run. And if you are running a Necromancer tank, you should probably leave the Warhorns and barriers or whatever to the other tank and the 2 healers in your group, in your trials group, and bring the Colossus to provide more major vulnerability. Unless obviously you already have enough Necromancer DPSs, then you can just swap this out to another ultimate, like the renewing animation for resurrections if you're in a proc group, or maybe the reviving barrier for a damage ward that will shield and damage your whole group, and also give you more Magicka recovery on your front bar. For this build though, we're going with the Colossus. It just depends on the situation and group you're in, which ultimates you want to bring. Most likely, if you're a Necro tank, people will probably expect you to bring major vulnerability anyway, so the Colossus. Alright, back bar, we've got the Blockade of Frost. This pretty much just slams your staff down and creates a frost damage field on the floor, which will deal frost damage to all the enemies in the target area, and also it will apply a frost safeguard for 6 seconds to you and nearby allies that will absorb up to 11,697 damage from projectiles, and then chilled enemies become frozen and are immobilized. So your Blockade of Frost will not only keep up your glyph on your backbar weapon on your staff, keep it proccing, but they can see that new ward that you and nearby allies will get that will put a damage shield around you that will work for projectiles that are being shot at you. So this is one of the changes to the Frost Staff, making it more viable for a tanking weapon. You can shield yourself and your allies with it. Plus you also get the Blockade, you can chill and immobilize enemies. Plus frost damage now also applies the minor brittle debuff, which is new as well. And then it also procs the glyph of your backbar as long as the Blockade is down, which is the Crusher glyph obviously, to reduce the enemy's physical and spell resistance. So very strong now frost staffs on a tank. I've always been using frost staffs on a Necromancer tank just because I like it better, especially in combination with the Unnerving Boneyard if you were to run that, or the Avid one, because 2 frost AoEs will most likely immobilize everything. And yeah, so we're going with the Frost Staff and the Blockade on the back bar here. Next up is Overflowing Altar. This puts an altar on the ground and everybody in the radius of 28 meters, which is pretty big. All the enemies will have minor lifesteal applied to them, which means if your team attacks them and damages them, they will actually heal for damaging the enemies. Plus, allies in the area can also activate the Blood Feast synergy, healing them for 65% of the max health, which is a very huge buff as well. Be aware though that this ability costs health, so if you're low on health yourself, you might not want to cast this until you healed back up. Very strong as well. Beckoning Armor comes from the... Where is it? Here. Bone Tyrant skill line again. It's pretty much the tanking skill line of the Necromancer. And this just grants you major resolve and increases your physical and spell resistance by 6k for 20 seconds. So that's how we get to our pretty great resistances of over 30k. Plus, while active, enemies that strike you with a ranged attack will be pulled towards you once every 3 seconds. So this is pretty much how we chain enemies in. I'm not running Silver Leash on this build, because as long as your bone armor is up and you range taunt an enemy, like an archer or something that is shooting to you from range, they will be pulled towards you anyway. It works quite nicely actually in content. You can pull a lot of enemies in. The ones that are attacking you will be pulled anyway, and ranged ones like archers or mages that normally wouldn't move, you just far taunt them and have your beckoning armor up, and they will be pulled towards you as well. Next thing we've got is proximity detonation. This turns you pretty much into a living bomb. Looks like this. You cast it, and after 8 seconds you will deal damage to everything around you in the area. The reason we're running this, obviously being the set we're running on this build, this comes from the assault skill line. It is the last thing you unlock, so you have to level up your assault to 7, but you should anyway, because other things like resolving vigor or aggressive warhorn are nice as well. And then morph it to proximity detonation, because that is pretty much the better morph. The reason we're using this skill for an assault skill is because it's the only one here that costs Magicka. All of the other ones cost stamina, and we don't necessarily want to drain our stamina, which we need for blocking. So we're using this one, which costs Magicka and also deals a little bit of damage. Next up is our Far Taunt. This comes from the Destruction Stuff skill line again, just like Elemental Locate did, and this is Destructive Clench. It starts out as Destructive Touch, morph it to Destructive Clench. And as you can see here now, Frost Clench also immobilizes and taunts the enemy. So this is your Far Taunt, your range taunt. If something is out of range and you want it to come towards you or only attack you, you can now use Frost Clench in a range of 15 meters. And then as you can see with the little shield above on the buff bar and the flames on the guy's heads here, he is taunted towards you and he will only attack you. Now, if you are running lightning staff on the back bar just because you prefer it, or because you are lacking off balance or lightning damage in your group, you can swap this out to Inner Rage from the Undaunted skill line, which is also a ranged taunt that deals magic damage and activates a synergy for an ally to take. But since we are already running a Frost Staff on the back bar, I thought why not use the new Frost Clench, just because it does do frost damage as well. And enemies hit are immobilized as well, and they're taunted towards you, so it seems like a very nice change to it. It's nice that we now have a range taunt on a Frost Staff, and no longer have to heavy attack, because obviously this is casting a lot faster than a heavy attack would, and you can just taunt everything towards you with the clench now. Alright, so much for that. And the last thing, already talked about it, is Aggressive Horn from the Assault skill line, the ultimate. This increases your group's max Magicka and stamina by 10% for 30 seconds, plus you and your allies gain major force, increasing your critical damage by 20% for 10 seconds. And that is pretty much why people run Warhorn. So if you are in a Trials group, just ask them whether they want you to use your Horn or your Colossus. Probably most likely the Colossus, because of the major vulnerability for an ultimate on a Necromancer tank. However, if there are enough Necromancers DPSs in the group already that can provide a good uptime on major vulnerability, you can use your Warhorn and give everybody major force, increasing their critical damage by 20% for 10 seconds. Okay, that's it. So much for the skills. Now let's quickly check out some other skills that you should have leveled. Won't take too long with this. Avid Boneyard is a really nice one because it gives you a synergy, and it works very nicely with your Blockade of Frost because it's 2 Frost AoEs, which will pretty much guarantee that enemies inside them will get immobilized. It also gives a synergy to the people, to yourself, that you can take, which can help you proc sets like Alkosh, or just get resources back if you needed them. Ravenous Goliath is not really necessary. It is nice to turn into a huge Goliath, but most things that could kill you in at that point anyway would be one-shot things or like mechanics that would wipe you. So this is just, I guess it's nice for PvP if you're into that, and it just looks nice, but it's not really necessary. Dead in Pain is a nice thing to have on the back bar in case you are running, in case you don't want to run Blood Altar or Overflowing Altar, and you're not using the monster set I'm using here. You could put Dead in Pain on the back bar because while slotted, your damage taken is reduced by 3%. Plus, you can also suck ultimate from corpses and gain major protection. So this is a nice skill to have as well. So is Agony Totem, which will apply minor vulnerability to targets, increasing their damage taken by 5% in area of effect, and also you can use it to CC enemies in one place to have them feared and stacked up and unable to move, so your DPS can kill them a little bit faster. So those two skills are very nice to have as well. Living Death, Expungement Modify is also nice because while slotted, the cost of your abilities are reduced by 3%, and you can remove negative effects from yourself and restore Magicka and stamina for each negative effect removed. So this is a very nice one too. So is Mortal Coil, where you can siphon a corpse and heal yourself and your allies between you and the corpse, and also restore stamina, plus while slotted your healing is increased by 3%, healing done. And obviously the ultimate, the Resurrection ultimate from the Living Death skill line, where you can resurrect 3 people at once in an area of effect sort of circle with a radius of 12 meters. That is also a very great thing to have, especially for progression groups or people that are trying to do dungeon hard modes for the first time, where reses might come in very handy, because usually the tank is the last person alive and you can just res your whole dungeon team with this at once, or a couple people in your trial. Also a very good one to have. Shield Discipline, the ultimate from the one hand and shield, is also very nice because you can just block everything without actually blocking, so you can use the 8 seconds for just randomly heavy attacking to get some resources back, or reapplying your buffs, or reapplying your proximity detonation, or your empowering grasp, or whatever you want, really. And Defensive Stance is a damage shield that you could use on the front bar if you would not want to give people that new, well, not new, but the new Empower buff, sort of. So this is a nice DPS boost with the Empower, but if you are new to tanking, you might want to have a shield on the bar, on the front bar, plus also having Defensive Stance equipped will increase the amount of damage you can block by 10%, and the cost of blocking for yourself is reduced by 10%. So this is a very nice thing that would usually run on the front bar if I wasn't running Empowering Grasp on this build. Okay, Crushing Shock from the Destruction Staff is a nice one to have as well, just because it's a range interrupt in case you were the one that would have to interrupt a certain enemy or boss at times, like in Asylum Sanctorium, the poison boss or something like that. You can just use that to range interrupt enemies on your back bar where your staff is. Immovable is also a nice skill to have, which will give you major resolve, increasing your physical and spell resistance and immunity to knockback and disabling effects, plus each piece of heavy armor warm increases the amount of damage you can block in the potency snare by 5%. So this makes you very, very bulky, but it also has you stay in one place for 6 seconds, not really able to move much. I've not really seen people use that a lot, but it is a nice skill to have anyway. Then we've got Silver Leash, obviously, which you should level up just in case you have a situation or a trial or a dungeon where you need to pull certain enemies in very, very quickly, and you can't really rely on your bone armor and Farton to do it, because that works every 3 seconds. So Silver Leash is definitely a good one to have as well. And then in here, obviously in a range, in case you're running a lightning staff on the back bar and you can't use the clench for a taunt. Spike Bone Shield is also a nice damage shield that gives a synergy as well. And Mystic Orb is a nice synergy you can give to your group to have them restore almost 4k magic or stamina if they take the combustion synergy, and also do a little bit of damage with it. In the assault skill line, you could use Vigor for a heal. The Scythe is a really strong heal, plus you also got your Spirit Mender up, so you shouldn't technically need it. But if you wanted to, in some situations, you could use Vigor as a heal as well, so Resolving Vigor is a nice skill to have. And then in the support skill line, obviously the ultimate, Reviving Barrier, is very strong and can be nice on your front bar in case you do not need to bring your Colossus. And Efficient Purge here, which cleanses yourself and your group members from negative effects, is also very nice for certain trials. Alright, let's get into the passives then. Gravelord. When your Spirit Mender dies, your next Spirit Mender's cost is reduced by 50%. You definitely want that. Increases your critical strike chance. That's not too important, but it's nice to have anyway. When a Gravelord ability is active, your spell and physical penetration are increased by 1500. That's always nice to have. And then increases your damage done with damage over time effects by 15%. So as you can see, all of these are pretty much DPS skills, but the only one that's really important is reusable parts. The other ones are nice to have, however, because you can do a little bit of damage as a tank as well. Bone Tyrant, this is pretty much a tanking skill line, so you want all of this. Whenever an enemy you are in combat with dies, within 20 meters of you, you restore 200 magic and stamina, so this is very nice for resource management. Reduce the damage taken from damage over time abilities by 15% while you have a Bone Tyrant ability active. Should always be the case because you always want your Beckoning Armor active. And then Health Avarice. Alright. Increases your healing received by 2% for each Bone Tyrant ability slotted, so that's 4% currently on the front bar. And then Last Grasp, very nice, just randomly increases your max health by 1250. That's pretty much just free health only for being a Necromancer, so you want all of those. And then Living Death, while you have a negative effect on you, your healing done is increased by 8%, and you are the tank, you will taunt things, you will get negative effects on you, so this is very nice to have as well. While you have a Living Death ability slotted, your critical strike chance with all healing abilities is increased, so we do have the Spirit Mender on the front bar. That is also very nice for us. Corpse Consumption, when you use an ability on a corpse, which we do as well, you generate 10 ultimate, and this can occur every 16 seconds, so that's just free ultimate for us, which means more Warhorns or more Colossuses. And then Undead Confederate, while you have Blast Bones, Skeletal Major, Spirit Mender active, your magic and stamina recovery is increased by 200%. It's very important, always keep your little Spirit Mender up so you have 200 more Magicka recovery, which you can then use for all of your skills. Obviously you want all of the ones in the One Hand and Shield skill line because it's your main weapon, and also in the Destruction Staff skill line because it's your main back bar weapon. We are running 1 piece of light armor, 1 piece of medium armor, and 5 pieces of heavy armor, so we want all of the passives in the heavy armor one. In the medium armor one, however, you only need Windwalker for the stamina recovery and Athletics for the movement speed. And in the light armor one, you only need the first 3 because all of the other ones only count when you have 5 or more pieces of light armor equipped. Fighters Guild. You pretty much only need Banish the Wicked to get ultimate when you kill Undead, Dead, or Werewolf, and Intimidating Presence to make your Silver Leash cost 15% less if you're using it. You do want all of the Undaunted ones though. Since we do run 1 light, 1 medium, and 5 heavy, our max health, stamina, and magicka are increased by 2% per type of armor, so that's a 6% bonus. And then activating synergies will restore more max health, stamina, and magicka. Very important passives here. On the PvP skill lines, the only thing you want is Magicka 8, so if you're running Purge or Reviving Barrier on your front bar, you get extra Magicka recovery. And then Alchemy, you want the medicinal use to have your potions last 30% longer and be able to have 100% uptime on them. Okay, best race for Necromancer tanking is still Nord. I've tried it on an Imperial before, and I've also tried it on an Argonian, but Nord definitely was the best of them. You get an extra 1000 max health and immunity to the chilled status effect. You get an extra 1500 max stamina, plus while you take damage, which you constantly do as a tank, you get 5 ultimate, and you get an extra physical and spell resistance of almost 4k. So all of these are really, really good for tanking. There's nothing in here for sustain, but you don't really need that so much on a Necromancer, whereas, for example, on a Nightblade tank, I prefer running an Imperial because it's a bit more max health and stamina, and more cost reduction and resource gain, because that's more important, for example, on a Nightblade tank, in my opinion. But on a Necromancer, Nord is definitely the best race, if you ask me. However, that does not mean that other races aren't viable. You can also run this build on, well, say, for example, an Imperial or an Argonian or even a Breton if you wanted to. But Nord definitely makes it a lot easier for you with the extra health, stamina, and resistances. And ultimate gain, obviously, because Necromancer tanks are pretty much here for the most part because of the Colossus. And extra ultimate is always great. Alright, so much for the passives. Let's get into the gear. This is the setup for the Magicka group, for a group with mostly Magicka DPS. Stamina groups will need different boss resistance debuff sort of values. So this is nice for Magicka groups at the moment. So we're running Powerful Assault, obviously, as you probably already guessed, because we're using the assault skill proximity, bomb, or detonation on the back bar. This adds 1,400, well, this has max health, max stamina, weapon damage, but here's where it's at the 5-piece. When you cast an assault ability, you and up to 5 group members within 10 meters gain 296 weapon and spell damage for 10 seconds. So every time we are using this proximity bomb, which lasts for 8 seconds, 5 members in your group will get a big buff of almost 300 weapon and spell damage. Mostly spell damage, since we're built for a magic group here. The Powerful Assault one-hander, doesn't matter if you have an axe, dagger, sword, or mace, should be in either decisive or defending. I opted for defending here, which gives us a little bit of a boost to physical and spell resistance, and then also a hardening enchant, which grants us a little damage shield, just because since we're running Empowering Grasp on the front bar and not Defensive Stance, we don't really have any ability to shield up on our bar. So I was going for the Hardening Enchant that gives us a little bit of a damage shield, and the Defending Dagger to make us a bit more bulky. The shield here you can have in either Sturdy or Reinforced or Infused, even if you wanted to have more max health or run it with a Tri-Stack Glyph, for example. That is pretty much your personal preference. It doesn't really matter what trait the shield is in. You could probably even have it in Divines for extra Magicka recovery, boost of your Mundus Stone. But yeah, so mine's in Reinforced still, just because it was cheaper basically. I might morph it to Sturdy, transmute it to Sturdy, just to have a bit more block cost reduction, since I'm not running Defensive Stance on the front bar. But it works just fine like this as well. Reinforced gives you a bit more resistances. And I've got a health glyph on there to increase our max health, because a lot of our skills scale off of our max health. And then obviously the ice stuff on the back bar, you want that one in Infused with a Crusher enchantment. So the Infused will make the Crusher 25% more strong. And what the Crusher does is it will reduce the target's physical and spell resistance. But since the Blockade procs again and again for about 12 seconds, this can constantly be reapplied with every tick. So it's not just 5 seconds really. Okay, so much for the weapons. You want a one-hander, a shield, and an ice stuff, an Infused, defending or decisive, and probably Sturdy or Reinforced. And then the jewelry, I went for 1 Triune, which gives max Magicka health and stamina, and 2 healthy, which just plain give health, all of them with Magicka recovery glyphs. This is also sort of personal preference. If you wanted more Magicka recovery, you could run an Infused necklace, for example, to make the glyph stronger, or you could run 3 Triune if you think 45k health is too much and you don't need that. Or you could just run, since Necromancers are a bit slow, maybe 1 in Triune and 2 in Swift to make you a little bit faster. You will lose out on about of 1,800 health if they're not unhealthy, but if you can deal with having 42k health, you'll be just fine. So this is all pretty much personal preference. This is the way I love to run it though. 1 triune, 2 healthy. Very nice on a Necromancer. Now on the body set we've got Eben still. This comes from Crypto Hearts. This has been around forever. It gives you health bonuses, and then it also increases the max health of you and your whole raid group, trials group of 11 other members by almost 1k within 28 meters of you. It's very nice to run this set. If you do not have to run Eben because people don't need a health buff, you can always put on Yolnakrins, obviously from the Sunspire trial, which will give you minor Aegis, adds a bonus of 1,000 about max health and stamina, and then when you taunt an enemy, you can give yourself and 11 other group members minor courage, increasing the weapon and spell damage for another 215. So you can buff the damage of your group even more running Yolnakrins on the body if you wanted to. You would probably do this when you're the main tank, because then you're the one that keeps on taunting the boss at all times and really giving that minor courage to group members all the time. Or you just go with Eben. It pretty much just depends on what your trials group needs. If they need a bit of a health buff, go with Eben. If they need a bit of a damage buff, go with Yolnakrins. If the other tank is already wearing Yolnakrins and Ebens, you can also go with Battalion Defender, for example, which would, after successfully blocking, you heal yourself or a group member. So this is really personal preference, but the 2 main buddy sets are Eben and Yolnakrin that you usually run. And then there's other things like Battalion Defender, if people need a bit more healing, or if you're off-tanking, even the Akabiri Dragon Guard set, which will reduce the cost of your ultimate abilities by 15%, so you can pump out even more Colossuses. Anyway, for the build here, I went with Eben, and then on the monster set, Lady Thorn. This will give you an extra health bonus, and when you cast an ability that costs health, you spawn a Blood Ball for 10 seconds, and you or an ally near you can activate the synergy from that Blood Ball, which is called Sanguine Burst, deals disease damage and applies Major Maim for 8 seconds, decreasing the damage done of the targets by 10%. So this is the reason we've got Blood Altar on the back bar. It costs health. As soon as we do it, we get that Sanguine Burst Blood Ball thingy, and then you can just activate that synergy and apply the Major Maim to everything. Monster sets, however, this patch aren't necessarily set in stone. It's just I do enjoy this one. I like it quite a lot. I also like being able to give myself a synergy when I use the Blood Altar, because the Blood Altar costs health, and as soon as I take the synergy I get health back, so Blood Altar is pretty much free at that point then. But yeah, if you don't have Lady Thorns, you can literally use any other monster set. It doesn't matter. You could run Earthcore, for example. You could run Stonekeeper for resources. You could run Symphony of Blades to give your group some resources back. You could run Thorvakuns for minor maim. You could run Engine Guardians to get resources back for yourself. You could even run Swarm Mothers. Anything really. Or Bloodspawn is still good as well. So yeah, there is no really OP monster set anymore for tanks. So you just use whatever you want or whatever you need, pretty much. You need more resources, go with Engine Guardian or Stonekeeper if you're running out easily. Or if you need more heals, you might even want to run Botgun the Night Flame or Sentinel over Kugums or something like that. So this is all up to you, really. But yeah, this is the Magicka build. You want Yolnakrin or Eben on the body, Powerful Assault on the jewelry and weapons, and then the monster set of your choice. As I said before, Lady Thorn works really nicely with Blood Altar, because it pretty much negates the cost of the Blood Altar. And you can put the Major Maim all over the place, and you get a synergy for yourself. And then, obviously, the Proximity Bomb to have the Powerful Assaulting proc. And also the Warhorn, because it's also an assault ability. So yeah, so much for the Magicka thing. Now, if you were to run on a stamina group, you could have the same body sets on, either Yolnakrin or Eben, but you would run I forgot the name of the set, the one that drops from Wohlenfeld, Tremor Tremor Scale is what it's called. I even have the helmet in my bank, but I didn't put it out yet because I forgot. So you wanted to run Tremor Scale on the monster set because it provides an extra about 3k physical resistance reduction on the boss. Only physical though, which is why Tremor Scale is only good in stamina fights. And then mostly for stamina groups you will still need Alkosh. So you would not be running Powerful Assault, you would be running Alkosh instead, which is then, except for the Tremor Scale monster set, pretty much the last version of the build. And then since you're not running Powerful Assault, you would also not need Proximity Deterioration, so you can just put your Avid Boneyard on here to give yourself another synergy that you can take. And as you know, Alkosh procs off of synergy taking, so you can give yourself this one from the Avid Boneyard, and you can give yourself this one from the Ladythorn monster set. Unless you are running Tremor Scale, obviously, then you can't give yourself this one, but you can still give yourself the one from the Boneyard. So, to sum it up, the stamina setup would be Avid Boneyard instead of Proximity Detonation, Alkosh instead of Powerful Assault, and Tremor Scale instead of Ladythorn. Alright, for the traits, as I said before, Defending Decisive on that one, Sturdy Reinforced on that one, Infused on the staff, Infused on all of the big pieces, meaning the head, chest, and legs. You can have tri-stack glyphs on all of them. And then Sturdy on all of the small pieces, meaning shoulders, waist, hands, and feet. And then I've talked about the traits of the jewelry before. Alright, we'll quickly look into the champion points. You've got 75 in Ironclad, 15 into Spell Shield, 49 in each Hardy and Elemental Defender, 51 in Thick Skinned, 15 in Heavy Armor Focus, and 19 in Quick Recovery. Now, as you realize, we're running a defending front bar weapon, and we have the Major Resolve from this, so our resistances are at 31k almost anyway, meaning if you are okay with dropping them down to like 29,500, you can of course take out the Spell Shield 15 points and the Heavy Armor Focus 15 points and just put them in here to have a little bit more in Hardy and Elemental Defender and Thick Skinned. Or go up with Ironclad all the way to 81 if you wanted that, or 82 I think it is the next percent, so you have 24% in there. This is personal preference as well. Like so many things with tanking, it really just depends on what you're comfortable with and what you can sustain and survive with. And yeah. But then here we've got 37 into Warlord, we've got 16 into Bashing Focus, and 21 into Sprinter, because Necromancers are a bit slower than other classes. We've got 64 in Arcanist and 56 into Tenacity, and then 56 in Shadow Ward to reduce the cost of block, and 20 into Tumbling to reduce the cost of roll dodging. This here we've got 64 and 31 into our Healing and Critical Healing, 52 in Master of Arms, 59 in Piercing, and 64 into Mighty. And these are the Alkosh CP. So if you do not ever run Alkosh, if you only run Powerful Assault or other sets like Akaviri Dragon Guard, you do not need anything here in Master at Arms or in Piercing and Mighty. You can just put all of that in Thaumaturge or Precise Strikes for critical healing with stamina abilities if you were to run Vigor, for example, or just buff Elfborn up a little bit more. But since I do run with stamina and Magicka groups, and I do switch between Powerful Assault and Alkosh, so the stamina and Magicka builds that I talked about before, I just leave my CP like that because that will work for both of them. Okay, so much for that. I hope that was informative. I hope you're having fun on your Necromancer tank. Let me know how it goes and how you like the build in the comments. I will see you next time. Have a good one. Bye bye.